Good afternoon. I'm Mark Polin. I'm a systems engineer with Exagrid. Been with the company for a bit over 7 years. I'm joined today by Ralph Goodwin, who's one of our territory managers. So after this session, if you have any questions, you want to talk specifically about your environment, please stop by the table. Be glad to work with you. What I'd like to do is just talk to you a little bit about Exagrid, start with who we are. We are a company that is based in Westborough, Massachusetts, just down the road, and we are laser focused on disk-based backup, making that the best possible product in that space that we can. And as IT professionals, especially after hearing what you've heard today, you face a pretty stark choice in how you want to proceed with your IT infrastructure. There are all-in-one products that, solve all your problems. And then there are best-of-breed products that are a little more narrow in their focus, but try to excel in those areas. Exagrid falls into the best-of-breed products. Now, we don't do everything, but I will say that we do disk-based backup exceptionally well. We have a huge customer base, thousands of Exagrid customers, and tens of thousands of Exagrids installed worldwide. With backup, you've got a series of challenges that have always existed since the beginning, since when tape was still being used as primary storage. And that is, as your data grows, the time that it takes to back it up grows, the time that it takes to restore grows, and the time that it takes to get that off-site grows. Until you get to a point where the backup system that you're using no longer meets your service level needs, and you have to replace it, right? If you think about tape, that's a classic example. Many of the disk-based backup products that are also on the market still have these problems inherent in them. So what did Exagrid do that's different than what everyone else did to address these? We looked at solving this problem specifically. So how do we permanently shorten the backup time for the amount of data that you have today and as your data grows and grows unpredictably? How do we restore it in the same time frame? Get it off site in the same time frame? And how do we avoid eliminating? How do we avoid, I won't use a double negative there. How do we avoid the forklift upgrade? That complete replacement and start over. We do that with the Exagrid disk-based backup system. And to do it, we chose two fundamental technologies to underpin the product. The first one is our landing zone with adaptive deduplication. So what does that mean? That means that when the backup application sends the data to the Exagrid, it's going to land it at the speed of disk. We're not going to do any processing to it. Just get it in its native useful form on disk. Then once it's on disk, these files land and close, we go ahead and use our adaptive deduplication to deduplicate them in parallel with the rest of the backup coming in, but not interfering with the performance of that backup coming in. Secondly, we use a scale-out storage architecture. So, Warren talked about this with SimpliVity. As your data grows, or as your VM footprint grows, you add additional appliances to the system. Very much the same model here with the Exagrid grid technology. That's the grid in Exagrid, if you will. So we always add full servers to add additional performance as well as additional storage. So you get these benefits of the fastest, shortest backup times, consistent backup times and restore times, and the elimination of obsolescence. So to give you an example of the elimination of obsolescence, I joined Exagrid back in 2007 and have been recommending Exagrid systems to many customers since then. Those customers can still use and are still using those Exagrid appliances that they bought 7+ years ago, along with the Exagrid appliances that they bought, say, this calendar year, for example. So there is no product obsolescence. There's backward and forward compatibility. Again, based on that grid architecture, so you're buying what you need when you need it. We work with all the major backup applications. So again, I like to focus on the best of breed. If you decide that your backup application isn't meeting your needs, you don't have to replace everything. You can replace the backup application. Exagrid is inherently heterogeneous. And if I can be a little on the bold side here, you can replace Exagrid. If we fail to meet your needs as a vendor and a product and a support organization, because we're doing best of breed, it is fairly simple and straightforward to take out Exagrid and replace it with one of the other products on the market. So we work to earn our customers' business on a daily basis so that does not happen. Where Exagrid fits, we sit behind the backup server or servers. Turns out most of our customers have a heterogeneous backup environment. They may be using, if I'll just use the, what's used most frequently for physical servers, most of our customers are still using Backup Exec. For virtual servers, most of our customers are using Veeam, and I'll talk about the integration that we've done with Veeam on several occasions. And for databases, Oracle and SQL, I'll mention particularly here, our customers are using RMAN and the SQL dump backup utilities. Again, all heterogeneously backing up to a single Exagrid system on site, and then that data gets replicated to the off-site system or cloud-based system. Now we leverage data deduplication to get long-term retention in a small footprint at the primary site. We leverage that data deduplication a second time to get that, to replicate that data very efficiently off to the second site. We are effectively a NAS-based system. We connect by Ethernet, either single gigabit or 10 gigabit. And again, very straightforward to connect that into your infrastructure. There are 10 different appliances in the product line. Everything from the EX1000 to the EX32000E. They all share the same hardware features. What do I mean by that? RAID 6 plus a hot spare, N+1 power supplies, hot swappable components. They all run the exact same software. And they're mix and match. I can put any of these models together in a grid, up to 25 appliances or nodes in a grid. And each one is designed to be able to back up the amount of data that it's rated for. This column here is the rating. So let's talk about our flagship system, the EX32000E. That is by default designed to back up 32 terabyte of data and keep roughly 16 weeks of retention. You can see how much that is as cumulative data. But what's important is if you look at, as you see the product line increase in density, it also increases in performance. The result of that is no matter which model you go with, it can back up the amount of data that it's rated for in less than 5 hours. So I can mix and match any of these in our current generation with any of the models from previous generations which had the same attributes without any conflict, without any planned obsolescence. We also have a server line. It's the exact same product. but it allows for encryption of data at rest. The only difference between these models is we use self-encrypting drives in these. So the overhead for encryption is about 1%. If you look at systems that use software-based encryption, it can be anywhere from 15 to 30% overhead to do that encryption and unencryption as needed. I talked about a little bit about fastest backups with the Exagrid model of allowing the data to land in that landing zone. Think of the landing zone as a high-speed disk cache where I'm going to keep the most recent backup in its entirety, its native format, to do high-speed restores, instant VM recoveries, tape copies, whatever the case, whatever you need, effectively fulfilling the need for when you need a large amount of data from the most recent backup at very high speeds. So those are the most typical failure scenarios that you would find in a data center. You've got that data in the landing zone. The comparison is with the other products that do inline deduplication. So before that data gets to disk, it's doing that very computational intensive deduplication to eliminate any redundant data. I'm not saying anything about storage efficiency. Some of these products are very efficient on the storage side, but what they're not doing is they're not leveraging that full performance of disk. In other words, if you're backing up to staging disk today and you go to a system that does inline deduplication, you're going to take a step back in performance. I don't know anybody that wants to take a step back in performance as they plan for the future. But the real Achilles heel of these inline deduplicating systems isn't the fact that they slow down the backups, because they've actually got to the point where they've tricked out these deduplicating file systems pretty amazingly. They can ingest data at amazing speeds, considering the amount of work they're doing. Not as fast as the Exagrid, but the real Achilles heel is everything on disk is deduplicated. So when I need to get that data back and get a lot of it back in a hurry, why? A system failed and I need to restore my file server, my Exchange server, my SharePoint server, fill in the blank. I want the backup with the best recovery point objective to have the best recovery time objective. I get that from the landing zone. What I get with the inline deduplicating systems is it has to rehydrate all that data before it can hand it back to the backup application. So if you're doing a full file server restore, it has a lot of work to do before it can get that data back. If you're trying to do a tape copy, what is a tape copy? It is a restore of everything you did in your full backup to tape. That's going to slow that down dramatically. And to leverage features that Veeam, I point over here because Neil Condon's over here, the SE from Veeam. If you want to try and leverage some of the groundbreaking features that Veeam pioneered several years ago, like instant VM recovery, it's just not going to work in this environment. With the Exagrid, again, you got that landing zone, so you get the best of both worlds. You get the performance of primary storage, and you get the economics of deduplicating storage. Now with Veeam, we've done engineering integration on a couple of different occasions, one about 5 years ago, and then another at the beginning of last year. The first one was so that we could take Veeam's already intelligently deduplicate and intelligently and efficiently deduplicated data, because they leverage VMware change block tracking to do that data reduction. We wanted to be able to take that in and further dedupe it using our much more aggressive deduplication algorithm. So we did that, but we also wanted to be able to support those great features that they pioneered, the instant VM recovery, sure backup, virtual lab. So that's what we did about 5 years ago. At the beginning of last year, when we embarked on the latest round of engineering integration, it was to actually run a piece of Veeam software directly on the Exagrid. And it's a mouthful. So the Exagrid Veeam Accelerated Data Mover. We'll call it the Data Mover for simplicity. And what the Data Mover does, it's effectively a subset of the Veeam proxy server, and it has two main benefits. The first one is, because it's now no longer addressing the Exagrid as a CIFS repository, it's using its own protocols, backups go faster, restores go faster, backup copy jobs go faster. Secondly, because that software is running directly on the Exagrid, when you go to do a synthetic full, which is a merge of the previous full and all the incrementals that occurred since then, it can do all that work directly on the Exagrid platform. So we're seeing about a 6x performance improvement in the synthetic fulls. I talked about the landing zone and the performance benefits that you get for both backup and restore, instant VM recovery, all those other things. That's how we get the fast performance for backup and restore initially. How do we keep that performance as your data grows? It's our grid architecture. So as your data grows, we're not just adding more disk and slowing things down. That was the initial problem we were trying to solve permanently. So we add additional servers and use the grid software that we've got, think of it as clustering software, to virtualize these systems together. So now I've got more CPU, more memory, more bandwidth, because I've got more data to work with. Of course, it's got more storage as well. So I can move twice as much data, I can process twice as much data for deduplication and undeduplication, and I can store twice as much data by adding that second Exagrid. So my backup time doesn't increase, my restore times don't increase. None of that stuff increases. So I get, an acceptable service or a high performance service level initially. I keep that as my data doubles, triples, and does whatever it's going to do. The alternative model is using a single controller in that inline deduplication, where you're just going to add more disk. No more CPU and memory, so now that's going to slow things down because it's got to dedupe more data. No more bandwidth, so that's going to slow things down because you got to move more data and you don't have more bandwidth to do that. I think of it as, it's like traffic on a single lane road. Eventually I can get all the traffic to its destination, but as I increase the amount of automobiles on that road, it takes more time. And that's this model, because you only got one lane in to this whole system, and it's through that single controller. And many of these vendors will tell you that they can outfit their controllers with many disk shelves, but based on experience, you will probably get to a point well before what the system is rated for, what it can, it says in the data sheet it can handle, it will run out of performance. And you will start looking for a replacement, and that could very well be before that system is fully depreciated. That makes for awkward discussions with your CFO when you're going back and looking for a replacement within a 3-year period. Again, the Exagrid with the grid-based architecture, even if you did grow faster than you had anticipated, all you have to do is grow the grid, just an incremental add to the system. Again, you get the performance and the capacity boost by doing that. The system has multi-site replication. It's a hub and spoke architecture. bidirectional replication, so every site can back up local and replicate its data off to another site. The user interface is very simple. It's purpose-built just to do reporting and configuring. And then, of course, it has the documentation in there as well. But most of our customers report that they only log into the Exagrid maybe a handful of times a year. Again, it's designed to be a set and forget backup system. If I told you you had to log into a set and forget backup system every day, you might think something sounded a little funny there. So what most organizations do for understanding what's going on the Exagrid on a daily basis is utilize the phone home features. And there's really 3 levels of phone home. The first level is a daily email report telling you a summary level of what you need to know. System status is okay, the capacity is good, that's all you need to look at. If you get additional emails or SNMP alerts from the Exagrid, that means that there's something that has occurred on it that might need your attention. And then there's a third level of phone home where this is all part of our single support offering, and that third level of phone home is where it collects performance and health data about the system, sends that back to Exagrid support, again, all based in Westboro for our North American customers. And the support engineers who are assigned to each of our customers based on what backup application you're running, so they have expertise in Exagrid and the backup apps that you're running, they look at a dashboard which shows them their customers with 12 key metrics about the health and performance of their systems. Shown graphically: green good, yellow warning, red bad. Again, only one support offering. It's a top level offering. We didn't want to do anything less than that for any of our customers. Includes hardware, software, phone, email, etc., and that assigned support engineer. Very quickly, we've won all the major recognition awards from the analysts over the years. And just to recap, this is disk-based backup, right? Do we use deduplication? Yes. Is this a deduplicating product? I would say no, right? This is a scalable backup storage product. We have to use deduplication. I consider that a table stakes feature to be in the backup because you have to use that in order to make backup affordable on disk. But our hallmarks are you're going to get the fastest backups, the fastest restores, and as your data grows, you're not going to need to have those forklift upgrades or complete replacements of the systems. You just incrementally grow the grid as your data grows, providing you the lowest total cost of ownership of any disk-based backup system on the market. Any questions? See, we've got like 2 or 3 minutes left. Yes?
How about like primary storage APIs and stuff? If you look at like Extreme.io or some of the TGI stuff that are starting to offer more APIs so that if your primary storage is deduplicated and compressed already, are you rehydrating to kind of go to an Exagrid, or like how is that working? Are you looking at any APIs or anything like that?
Yeah, and we continue to look at that. Keep in mind that the data is coming to the Exagrid through the backup application.
Right.
So that would really be more on the domain of the Veeams and the other backup apps out there. But we do have a group led by our founder, Dave Terrian, that does the research end of things at Exagrid, and yes, we're absolutely looking at that. Now, the one thing that you don't want to do is back up somebody else's deduplicated data, right? Because then you find yourself in a situation where if you need to do a restore, you have a multi-step process on your hands. There's one vendor out there, Commvault, with their Sympana, where they allow you to actually take the deduplicated data and put that off to tape. And they talk about the tape cartridge savings. If I were the IT professional who was responsible for that, and I once upon a time did work in IT, then I chickened out and went to work for vendors. If I were the guy on the hook for that, I would not sleep well at night, because you have to restore the deduplicated data and the index, right? So I can undeduplicate it. Then you have to run all that, assuming it came off tape okay. Then you have to do the rehydration process. Now I finally have something that I can restore. What's that going to do to your recovery time? Could be scary. So, today, it's the backup apps that handle that, but we want to make sure that we get something that we can recover in a very tight time frame. Thank you. Any other? Yes, sir.
I'm not only old, I'm old school.
Yeah.
How do I get my data off-site? Instead of having everything in my data center, and then when it crashes and burns, because I'm near an airport, I lose everything.
If you're really old school,
now
then
you on there.
Well, we don't have the backpack anymore. You put the tapes in your backpack and you take them home. That's really old school.
No, they go in the trunk of my car.
There you go. There you go. And as you're driving home, you see the Iron Mountain truck broken down. Yes, so I understand old school. I only mentioned it briefly on a couple of slides but we've got replication to get that data off-site, either to your own site or to one of our cloud partners. So you may choose to, you absolutely, the data, what's the old adage? The data isn't really protected until it's off-site. So that's true. So we replicate, again, leveraging our data deduplication to get that data off-site as efficiently across your WAN. Any other? I'm out of time. So if you do have any further questions, please stop by the Exagrid table, and we'd be glad to talk with you.